The warning lights filled the cockpit with red. Han Solo's hands moved fast across the control panel. But nothing worked anymore. The small mining ship shook hard, metal screaming as it tore apart. Outside the window, a moon grew larger and larger. He was going to crash. "Come on, come on," Han Solo whispered, pulling hard on the controls. The ship didn't listen. It fell like a stone through the alien sky. The impact threw him forward. His head hit something hard. Pain exploded behind his eyes. Then everything went black. When Han Solo opened his eyes, he saw purple. Purple sky, purple rocks, and strange plants that glowed with soft blue light. His whole body hurt. He tried to sit up and gasped at the pain in his ribs. The ship was destroyed. Pieces of metal and plastic covered the ground around him. Smoke rose from what was left of the engine. He was alive, but barely. His suit was torn. Blood ran down his face from a cut above his eye. Han Solo looked around slowly. Mountains of crystal rose in the distance. The air felt heavy and smelled like metal. This moon was far from any human world. No one would come looking for him out here. Han Solo spent the first hour gathering what he could find: a medical kit, some food packets, a water container, and a few tools. His communication device was broken. The emergency beacon had shattered in the crash. He was alone. That night, the temperature dropped fast. Han Solo found a small cave between two rocks and huddled inside. Strange sounds echoed across the landscape. Howls and clicks and things he couldn't name. He didn't sleep much. The next morning, they found him. Han Solo was checking his supplies when he heard the clicking sound. He turned and froze. 3 creatures stood at the edge of his camp. They were tall. Taller than him, with scaled skin that shifted between green and gray. Their heads were narrow, with large eyes that glowed faintly. Strange markings on their skin pulsed with light. They weren't human. They weren't anything Han Solo had ever seen before. One of them pointed a weapon at him. It looked like a spear made from bone and sharp crystal. The creature made clicking sounds at the others. Han Solo raised his hand slowly, showing he had no weapon. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said, even though he knew they couldn't understand. "My ship crashed. I just need help." The creatures moved closer. One of them, smaller than the others, tilted its head as it studied Han Solo. It made a different sound. Softer. The one with the spear clicked angrily and jabbed it toward Han Solo. They talked among themselves in their clicking language. Han Solo stayed very still. His heart pounded in his chest. These creatures could kill him easily. He was injured, alone, and had no idea where he was. Finally, the one with the spear grabbed Han Solo's arm. The grip was strong, the scaled skin rough against his. They pulled him to his feet and pushed him forward. The smaller one gathered some of Han Solo's supplies. They were taking him somewhere. They walked for hours across the strange moon. The creatures moved easily over rocks and through narrow passages. Han Solo struggled to keep up. His ribs hurt with every breath. Twice he stumbled and fell. Each time, the smaller creature helped him stand. The one with the spear just watched with cold eyes. They entered a valley filled with crystal formations. Han Solo saw more of the creatures now. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. They lived in caves carved into the crystal walls. Children ran between the adults, their markings brighter and more colorful. Everyone stopped to stare at the stranger. The creatures took Han Solo deep into the caves. The walls glowed with natural light from the crystals. They brought him to a large chamber where an older creature sat on a raised stone. This one had darker scales and markings that moved slowly across its skin like living art. Other creatures stood around it, clearly important. The one with the spear spoke in rapid clicks and gestures. It pointed at Han Solo several times. The old creature listened, its large eyes never leaving Han Solo's face. When the speaking finished, the chamber fell silent. The old creature stood and walked toward Han Solo. It moved slowly, studying him from every angle. Then it reached out and touched Han Solo's face with long fingers. The touch was gentle, curious. It made a sound, and 2 larger creatures grabbed Han Solo's arms. They locked him in a smaller cave. A heavy stone blocked the entrance. Hansol sat in the darkness, his body aching, his mind racing. He didn't know if they would kill him or keep him prisoner. He didn't know what they wanted. Hours passed, maybe days. It was hard to tell in the cave. They brought him water and strange food that tasted like bitter plants. Hansol ate because he had to survive. He checked his injuries with his medical kit. The cut on his head was bad, but the kit sealed it. His ribs were probably cracked, but not broken. On the third day, he heard sounds outside his cave, screaming. The creatures were in trouble. Hansol pushed against the stone. It moved slightly. He pushed harder, ignoring the pain in his ribs. The stone shifted more. He squeezed through the gap and stumbled into the main cave system. A young creature lay on the ground, bleeding from its leg. A deep cut ran from its knee to its foot. Other creatures stood around it, making distressed sounds. The small one from before knelt beside the injured child, trying to stop the bleeding with its hands. Hansol didn't think. He ran forward with his medical kit. The creatures turned on him, angry and scared. But Hansol ignored them. He knelt beside the child and opened his kit. The small creature grabbed his arm, clicking frantically. Hansol met its eyes and nodded slowly. "Let me help," he said quietly. "Please." He pulled out the medical spray. The creatures watched as he cleaned the wound. The child cried out, but Hansol worked quickly. He sprayed the sealant over the cut. The bleeding stopped immediately. The skin began to close. The creatures made sounds of wonder. The small one touched the sealed wound gently, its eyes wide. The child stopped crying. In minutes, it stood up, testing its leg. The wound was closed, pink and healing. The old creature appeared at the edge of the crowd. It had watched everything. Now it stepped forward and made a long, complex sound. The other creatures backed away from Hansol. The old one gestured at Hansol, then at the child, then at the caves around them. It made the gesture again. Hansol thought he understood. They weren't going to kill him. Not yet. The small creature helped Hansol stand. It clicked softly and led him to a different cave. This one had soft materials on the floor, and a small opening that let in light. Not a prison, something more like a room. Hansol sat down carefully. His body hurt, but he was alive. The creatures had seen what his medicine could do. Maybe that would keep him alive, long enough to find a way home, or maybe he would die here, alone on a moon whose name he didn't even know. Surrounded by creatures who saw him as something between a prisoner and a curiosity. Outside his cave, he heard them talking in their clicking language. He heard the word they kept repeating when they pointed at him. He didn't know what it meant yet, but he would learn. He had to. His life depended on it. Days became weeks. Hansol learned to survive among the Veltar. That was what they called themselves. The clicking language was hard, but he practiced every day. The small creature who had helped him was named Nim. Nim was young, curious, and patient with Hansol's terrible attempts at speaking. Rix? Hansol tried, clicking his tongue against his teeth. Nim made a sound that Hansol thought might be laughter. Crix. Nim corrected, clicking faster and sharper. Crix was their leader. The old one was Tella, a shaman who read meanings in the crystal patterns. And there was Vorn, a hunter who hated Hansol. Vorn's eyes followed him everywhere, full of distrust and anger. Hansol watched the Veltar carefully. He learned their ways. They were smart, but they had no technology. Everything they used came from the moon itself: bone tools, crystal blades, woven plant fibers for rope. They knew the land better than Hansol could ever learn. But they struggled with things that seemed simple to him. The water problem was the first thing he noticed. The Veltar collected water from underground streams, but the water often made them sick. They accepted this as normal. Some got better, some died. That was life. Hansol couldn't accept it. He took pieces from his crashed ship and built something. It took days of work. The Veltar watched him with curious eyes. Vorn watched with suspicious ones. When Hansol finished, he showed Nim. "Watch," he said in broken clicks. He poured dirty water into one end of his device. Clean water came out the other side. Nim's markings flashed bright with excitement. Nim took the clean water to Tella. The old shaman tested it, drank it, waited. The water was good. Better than good. It was safe. Crix came to see Hansol's creation. The leader studied the device for a long time, touching the metal parts, watching the water flow through. Crix made a sound of approval and ordered the Veltar to bring all their water to Hansol's filter first. That night, fewer children cried from sick stomachs. Hansol felt something warm in his chest. It felt like purpose, but Vorn wasn't happy. The hunter approached Hansol while he worked on improving the filter. "You change our ways." Vorn clicked harshly. "This is wrong. We are Veltar. We survive as we always have. Your children are dying," Hansol replied in simple clicks. "This helps them live." Vorn's scales darkened with anger. "You are not Veltar. You do not understand. These changes make us weak. We forget our strength when we use your strange magic." Hansol tried to explain about science, about engineering, but the words didn't translate. To Vorn, everything Hansol made was magic. Dangerous magic that would destroy their traditions. The hunter walked away, but Hansol felt the threat in the air. Vorn would cause trouble. It was only a matter of time. Hansol continued helping where he could. He showed them how to use leverage to move heavy stones, making their caves safer. He taught them to preserve food longer using the cold parts of the caves. Small things, but they made life easier. Nim became his friend. They spent hours together. Nim teaching Hansol about the moon, and Hansol teaching Nim about humans and Earth. Nim was fascinated by the idea of a world covered in water, of billions of humans living together. "Do humans glow?" Nim asked one day, pointing at the Veltar's bioluminescent markings. "No," Hansol laughed. "We're pretty boring compared to you." "Not boring," Nim clicked. "Strange. Good strange." 2 months after the crash, Hansol heard the screaming. It came from the valley outside the caves. He ran with the other Veltar to see what was wrong. A creature was attacking. It was massive. Longer than 3 Veltar laid end to end. Its body was covered in armored plates. Multiple legs carried it fast across the ground. Its head was mostly mouth, filled with rows of sharp teeth. The sound it made was horrible, a high-pitched shriek that hurt Hansol's ears. "Shrieker," someone clicked. The Veltar grabbed weapons and formed a defensive line. Children were pulled into the caves. Warriors prepared to fight. Hansol watched in horror as the Shrieker grabbed a Veltar warrior in its jaws. The creature's screams were cut short. Other warriors stabbed at the monster with spears, but the armored plates protected it. Their weapons barely scratched its skin. Crix was organizing the defense, but Hansol could see they were losing. The Shrieker was too strong, too well protected. More Veltar were going to die. Hansol ran back to where he kept his salvaged ship parts. His hands shook as he grabbed pieces of metal and the last of his power cells. An idea formed in his mind. It was crazy, but it might work. He assembled the pieces as fast as he could, a speaker from the ship's communication system, a power cell, wires connecting them. He adjusted the frequency as high as it would go. His fingers fumbled with the controls. Please work, he whispered. Hansol ran back to the battle. 3 more Veltar were down. The Shrieker was moving toward the caves where the children hid. Vorn fought bravely, stabbing at the creature's eyes, but even he was being pushed back. Hansol activated his device. The sound that came out was beyond human hearing, but he saw the effect immediately. The Shrieker stopped. Its head twisted toward the device. It made a sound of pain and confusion. Hansol turned the frequency higher. The Shrieker shrieked again, this time in distress. It backed away from the Veltar, away from the caves. Hansol walked forward, holding the device in front of him like a weapon. The monster retreated further. "Go!" Hansol shouted. "Get out of here!" The shrieker turned and ran, its armored body crashing through rocks as it fled. Hansol kept the device on until the creature disappeared over the ridge. Then his hands finally stopped shaking, and he turned off the power to save the battery. Silence fell over the valley. The Veltar stared at Hansol. He stood there holding his strange device, breathing hard, looking small and weak compared to their warriors. But he had driven away the shrieker when their spears could not. Crix approached slowly. The leader's markings pulsed in a pattern Hansol had learned meant deep thought. Crix looked at the device, then at Hansol's face. "You saved us," Crix clicked clearly. "You are not prisoner anymore. You are guest." The word was close to that, anyway. Hansol's understanding of their language was still limited. But the meaning was clear. Something had changed. Nim rushed forward and grabbed Hansol's arm. "You are hero. You defeated the shrieker." "I just scared it away," Hansol protested. "I didn't defeat anything." But the other Veltar were gathering around him now, touching his arms, making sounds of respect and wonder. Even some who had been cold to him before showed warmth in their markings. Only Vorn stayed back. The hunter's scales were dark, his expression hard to read. He clicked something to Crix that Hansol didn't catch. Then Vorn turned and walked away into the caves. Tella approached, moving slowly on old legs. The shaman studied Hansol with ancient eyes. "You use strange power," Tella clicked. "Power from the sky. The great dark above sent you to us." "I'm just an engineer," Hansol tried to explain. "These are tools, not magic." But Tella made a gesture that meant the conversation was over. "You are blessed," the shaman declared. "The great dark speaks through your hands." That night, the Veltar held a gathering. They shared food and water. They told stories of the shrieker attack and how the strange sky creature had saved them. Each telling made Hansol's actions sound more impressive. Hansol sat with Nim and watched the tribe celebrate. He felt strange. These weren't his people, this wasn't his home. But for the first time since the crash, he felt less alone. "What do they call me?" he asked Nim. "I hear a word repeated. When they point at me." Nim's markings brightened. "Skywalker. The one who fell from above and walks among us." "Skywalker," Hansol repeated. It sounded better in the Veltar language, more musical. "I can live with that." But even as he sat among the celebrating tribe, Hansol's eyes drifted to the purple sky above. Somewhere up there were humans. His people. His real home. He pushed the thought away. Survival first. He could think about rescue later. If rescue ever came, for now, he was Skywalker. The stranger who had become something more. The human who had found a place among aliens. At least for a while. And deep in the caves, Vorn sharpened his weapons and planned. The stranger was becoming too important, too valued. That was dangerous. Changes were happening too fast. Vorn would need to act before the stranger corrupted their ways completely. The hunter's decision was made. He would challenge the Skywalker to the trial. The dead wastes would reveal the truth. Either the stranger would prove worthy, or the wastes would kill him. Either way, Vorn would have his answer. The challenge came at sunrise. Vorn walked into the center of the tribe's gathering space and made the formal clicking pattern that demanded attention. Every Veltar stopped what they were doing. This was important. "I challenge the Skywalker," Vorn announced, his voice carrying across the caves. "He brings changes. He brings strange power. But is he worthy? Has he earned his place among us?" Hansol stood up slowly. He had been expecting something like this. Vorn's hatred had been growing for weeks. "What kind of challenge?" he asked in careful clicks. "The ancient trial," Vorn replied. 3 days in the dead wastes. Alone. No help. No rescue. If you survive, you are one of us. If you die, the wastes will judge you unworthy. A wave of shocked sounds rippled through the tribe. Nim grabbed Hansol's arm. "No." The dead wastes kill everyone. No, Veltar has survived alone. Crix stepped forward, markings dark with anger. This is too much, Vorn. The trial is for warriors who have trained their whole lives. The Skywalker is guest now, not, I accept, Hansol said. Everyone went silent. Nim's grip on his arm tightened. You do not understand. Nim clicked frantically. The air is poison. The ground is broken. Shriekers hunt there. Please, do not do this. Hansol looked at the faces around him. Some showed concern. Others showed curiosity. Vorn showed satisfaction. If Hansol refused, Vorn would call him coward. The tribe would lose respect for him. Everything he had built would crumble. But if he died in the wastes, at least he would die trying. I accept the trial, Hansol repeated firmly. When do I start? Vorn's scales rippled with dark pleasure. Now. They gave him 1 hour to prepare. Hansol gathered what he could. His rebreather mask from the ship, though the filters were old. A water container. His multi-tool. The medical kit. Some food packets. 1 power cell. He couldn't take much. The trial required him to survive with minimal equipment. Tella came to see him before he left. The old shaman placed a hand on Hansol's shoulder. The Great Dark brought you to us for a reason, Tella clicked slowly. Trust in that. The wastes will test you. But you have power inside. Strange power. Use it. I'll try, Hansol promised. Nim was crying. The young Veltar's markings flickered erratically with emotion. Come back. Promise me you will come back. Hansol wanted to promise, but he couldn't lie to his friend. I'll do my best. The tribe walked him to the edge of their territory. Beyond lay the dead wastes, a vast expanse of broken ground and toxic air. Even from here, Hansol could see the yellow clouds that hung over the region. The ground was covered in sharp rocks and deep cracks. Nothing grew there. Nothing lived there. Vorn stood at the boundary, his expression unreadable. 3 days. The hunter clicked. When the sun rises on the 4th day, if you are not back, you are dead. Hansol nodded. He put on his rebreather mask, checked his supplies one last time, and stepped across the invisible line into the wastes. Behind him, the Veltar began the death chant. They sang it for all who entered the wastes and never returned. The sound followed Hansol as he walked into the yellow mist. The first thing he noticed was the air. Even through the rebreather, he could smell the chemicals. Sulfur and something else. Something that burned his nose. The mask filtered most of it, but Hansol knew the filters wouldn't last 3 days. He would need to find another solution. The temperature was all wrong too. During the day it was hot enough to burn exposed skin. At night, it would drop below freezing. Hansol's suit would protect him somewhat, but not enough for 3 full days. He walked for hours, searching for shelter. The ground was treacherous, full of hidden holes and unstable rocks. Twice he nearly fell into deep cracks. The yellow mist made it hard to see more than a few meters ahead. As the sun began to set, Hansol found a small cave. It was barely large enough for him to sit in, but it would protect him from the worst of the cold. He checked the air inside with his scanner. Toxic, but less than outside. He could survive here tonight. He ate 1 food packet and drank sparingly from his water. 3 days. He had to make everything last 3 days. The cold came quickly when the sun disappeared. Hansol wrapped himself in his torn suit and shivered through the night. Sleep came in short, uncomfortable bursts. The second day was worse. His rebreather filters were clogging. The toxic air was thick here, full of particles that the mask couldn't handle. Hansol's throat burned when he breathed. His eyes watered. He needed to find cleaner air or create a better filter. That's when he found the fungi, growing in a sheltered crack, glowing softly with blue light. The same kind of fungi the Veltar grew in their caves for light. They were sacred to the tribe, used only in special ceremonies. Hansol knelt and studied them carefully. The fungi absorbed the toxic chemicals in the air. That's why they glowed. They converted poison into light energy. If he could use them, he carefully harvested some fungi and brought them to his cave. Using his multi-tool, he created a crude chamber around the plants. He added water from his container. Then he waited. Slowly, the air around the fungi began to change. His scanner showed the toxins dropping. Not by much, but enough. Enough to breathe without the mask for short periods. On the third day, his rebreather died completely. The filters were destroyed. The mask useless. But Hansol had his fungi chamber. He could breathe the air they created. It wasn't perfect. His lungs still hurt. But he would survive. That afternoon, he heard the shriek. A shrieker had found him. This one was smaller than the monster that had attacked the tribe, but it was still 3 times Hansol's size. It moved across the broken ground easily, hunting. Its armored head swung back and forth. Searching, Hansol had no sonic device here, no weapons except his multi-tool. He was going to die, unless he was smart. Hansol grabbed his power cell and his multi-tool. He worked frantically as the shrieker got closer. The creature had caught his scent now. It was coming right toward him. He created a simple explosive. The power cell was unstable anyway. With the right modifications, it would overload. He needed timing. 1 chance. The shrieker charged. Hansol waited until the last second. Then, he threw the device into the creature's open mouth and dove behind a large rock. The explosion was smaller than he hoped but loud enough. The shrieker screamed and thrashed, injured but not dead. Hansol didn't wait. He ran deeper into the wastes, climbing over rocks, sliding into crevices. The wounded shrieker couldn't follow easily. Finally, the sounds of pursuit faded. Hansol collapsed against a rock wall, gasping for breath. His lungs burned from running in the toxic air. His last power cell was gone. But he was alive. Night fell on the 3rd day. Hansol found another small cave. He brought his fungi chamber with him. The glowing plants his only source of clean air now. He had no food left. Very little water. His body was exhausted. His throat raw from breathing poison. But he had survived. 3 days in the dead wastes. As dawn broke on the 4th day, Hansol began walking back. Every step hurt. His legs shook with exhaustion. The toxic air had damaged his lungs even with the fungi helping. He coughed blood several times. The walk took hours. Several times he had to stop and rest. The sun climbed higher, hotter. Hansol's water ran out. His vision blurred. He saw them when he was still 100 meters from the boundary. The entire tribe stood waiting, watching. They had expected him to die. They were watching to see if a body would emerge. Hansol stumbled forward. His legs gave out and he fell. He got up, fell again, got up again, 50 meters. The Veltar stood silent. Even Vorn, standing at the front, showed no expression. 20 meters. Hansol could barely breathe now. His fungi chamber had died hours ago. Every breath was fire in his chest. 10 meters. He could see Nim's face. His friend was crying, markings flashing with hope and fear. Hansol fell one last time at the boundary. He tried to get up but couldn't. His body had nothing left to give. Then hands grabbed him. Nim and another Veltar pulled him across the line, back into safe territory. Hansol lay on the ground, gasping. Unable to move, Tella approached with water. The shaman helped Hansol drink. "You survived," Tella clicked with wonder. The first to survive alone in living memory. Hansol tried to speak but could only cough. He reached into his torn suit and pulled out something. The rare minerals he had found in the deep cracks of the wastes. Blue crystals that the Veltar believed were myths. He had seen them in Tila's stories, heard them described as treasures from the ancient times. He held them out to Tella with shaking hands. The old shaman gasped. The entire tribe made sounds of shock. "How?" Crix clicked. "These are legend. They do not exist." Crix clicks. "They exist," Hansol managed to say. "Deep, In the dark places, Vorn stepped forward. For a long moment, the hunter stared at Han Sol. Then, slowly, Vorn knelt. It was a gesture of respect, acceptance. You are worthy, Vorn clicked. You are Veltar now. Brother. The tribe erupted in celebration sounds. They lifted Han Sol carefully and carried him to the healing caves. Tella treated his damaged lungs with traditional medicines. Nim stayed by his side, clicking stories to keep him company. Han Sol slept for 2 days. When he woke, he found the blue crystals placed in a place of honor in the main cave. Below them, Tila had carved symbols. The story of the Skywalker's trial. The tribe treated him differently now. Not as a guest, not as a stranger, as one of their own. Warriors greeted him with respect. Children asked to hear his story. Even Vorn, though still serious, showed acceptance. Han Sol had passed the trial. He had proven himself in the only way the Veltar understood. Through strength, through courage, through refusal to give up. He was Skywalker. And now, he was family. The scouts brought the news 3 months after Han Sol's trial. Another tribe had been seen at the eastern ridge. Not a small group. An army. Crix called a council immediately. Han Sol attended now, recognized as a full member of the tribe. Warriors gathered in the great cave, their markings dark with concern. The Kethra, Crix clicked grimly. They come. Han Sol had heard stories of the Kethra. They were larger than the Veltar, more aggressive. They had conquered 3 other tribes in recent years, enslaving the survivors. The Kethra believed strength was everything. They took what they wanted. How many? Vorn asked. 200 warriors, the scout replied. Maybe more. They move slowly, but they come toward our territory. The cave fell silent. The Veltar had maybe 70 warriors. Against 200, they had no chance. Not in direct combat. We could run, one elder suggested. Leave these caves. Find new territory. And go where? Vorn snapped. The wastes will kill us. Other tribes control the good lands. We run, we die slowly instead of quickly. We could surrender, another voice offered. Become part of the Kethra. Survive that way. Crix's scales darkened with anger. As slaves? Watching our children grow up in chains? No. I would rather die fighting. Han Sol had been listening quietly. Now he spoke. There is a third option. Every eye turned to him. Nim leaned forward with interest. Even Vorn looked curious. We cannot match their strength. Han Sol clicked carefully. His language skills had improved greatly. But we can match their tactics. We can use the land. We can be smart. Speak plainly, Skywalker, Crix commanded. Han Sol stood and walked to the center of the gathering. On my world, small forces defeat large forces all the time. Not through strength. Through preparation. Through understanding the battlefield. Through making the enemy fight where we choose, not where they choose. He spent the next hour explaining his plan. The Veltar listened with growing understanding. Some looked skeptical. Others looked hopeful. Vorn's expression was unreadable. When Han Sol finished, Crix stood. This is strange thinking. Not how Veltar fight. But the Skywalker has proven himself. I say we try his way. I agree. Vorn clicked, surprising everyone. Better to die trying something new than die doing what has always failed. The tribe began to prepare. Han Sol worked day and night with the warriors. He taught them things humans had learned over thousands of years of warfare. First, he taught them about fortifications. The Veltar had never built defenses before. They simply fought in open ground. Han Sol showed them how to block paths with rocks, creating choke points. How to build barriers that protected defenders but slowed attackers. They chose Crystal Canyon as their battlefield. It was a narrow passage that any army would have to cross to reach the Veltar caves. Han Sol walked the canyon repeatedly, studying every rock, every crack, every advantage. Here, he marked with blue crystal dust. And here, and here. These are where you stand. Next came the weapons. The Veltar used spears for close combat. Hansol taught them to create spear throwers. Simple devices that let them throw farther and harder. One warrior could strike from twice the normal distance. Distance is safety, Hansol explained. Hit them before they hit you. He showed them how to work together. Not as individual warriors but as units. How to form lines that supported each other. How to rotate when tired. How to communicate in battle with simple signals. Vorn took to these teachings with fierce dedication. The hunter had become Hansol's strongest supporter. Show me more. Vorn clicked again and again. Teach me everything. They practiced every day. Warriors learned to move as one. To respond to drum signals. To hold their positions even when afraid. Hansol pushed them hard. The Kethra were coming. There was no time for gentle teaching. The tribe's engineers, guided by Hansol, prepared the canyon itself. They loosened large rocks on the ridge above. They created hidden pits, covered with weak crystal sheets. They marked safe paths that only the Veltar would know. Children were sent to distant caves with the elders too old to fight. Supplies were hidden. Escape routes were planned in case everything failed. Nim worked alongside Hansol through it all. We will win. Nim clicked with certainty. You will lead us to victory. I won't fight, Hansol reminded his friend. I'm not a warrior. I can plan. But you must execute. Your mind is your weapon, Nim replied. It is more dangerous than any spear. On the 10th day, the Kethra arrived. Hansol watched from the canyon rim as the enemy army appeared on the horizon. They were massive. Each warrior half again, as large as the Veltar. Their scales were red and black. Their markings aggressive. They carried huge clubs and spears. They moved with the confidence of those who had never lost. Their leader was enormous. Covered in scars. Wearing armor made from shrieker plates. He stood at the front of his army and roared. The sound echoed across the valley. Veltar, the leader shouted in the common clicking language. You have one chance. Submit now. Become Kethra. Or be destroyed. Crix stood at the canyon entrance, small compared to the Kethra leader but fearless. We are Veltar. We bow to no one. If you want our land, come and take it. The Kethra leader laughed. So be it. Your death will be quick. He signaled his army forward. 200 warriors began marching toward Crystal Canyon. The ground shook with their footsteps. Hansol was positioned at the highest point, where he could see the entire battlefield. He had drums beside him for signals. His hands were sweating. Everything depended on the next few hours. The Kethra entered the canyon. Immediately they had to narrow their formation. The canyon walls forced them into a column instead of a wide line. Good. That was the first advantage. Hansol waited until half the enemy army was in the canyon. Then he struck the drum. One loud boom. The Veltar warriors appeared on the canyon rims. They used their spear throwers. Dozens of spears flew down into the packed Kethra formation. Warriors fell, surprised by the distance and power of the throws. The Kethra leader roared orders. His warriors raised shields and pressed forward. They were not easy to stop. Hansol struck the drum twice. The second signal. Veltar warriors cut ropes. The loosened rocks began to fall. Huge boulders crashed down the canyon walls, smashing into the Kethra below. The enemy scattered, trying to avoid the deadly rainfall. 3 drum beats. The third signal. The Veltar at the canyon entrance collapsed the prepared barricade behind the Kethra. Now the enemy was trapped. They couldn't retreat easily. They had to fight in the killing zone. 4 beats. The final signal. The Veltar warriors on the canyon floor stepped back onto the marked safe paths. The Kethra charged forward, right onto the hidden pits. Crystal sheets shattered. Warriors fell, screaming. More spears flew from above. The Kethra were strong and brave, but they were fighting blind. They didn't know the terrain. They didn't know where the next trap would spring. They bunched together for protection. making themselves easier targets. Han Solo watched as his plan unfolded. It was terrible and beautiful at once. He had never wanted to design death, but his tribe needed to survive. The battle lasted 3 hours. The Kethra kept pushing forward, kept trying to reach the Veltar positions. They were incredibly tough, but every step cost them warriors. Every advance was paid for in blood. Finally, the Kethra leader called retreat. His army had lost nearly half its warriors. The survivors pulled back, leaving their dead in the canyon. The Veltar had lost only 12 warriors, 12 deaths instead of extinction. As the Kethra disappeared over the ridge, the Veltar erupted in celebration. They had won. They had defeated an enemy twice their size. It seemed impossible, but it had happened. Crix climbed to where Han Solo stood. The leader's markings were bright with pride and gratitude. You saved us, Skywalker. Without your strange knowledge, we would be slaves. Or dead. Han Solo looked at the canyon below, at the bodies of Kethra warriors. He felt sick. I helped you survive. But I am not proud of the death. That is what makes you wise. Crix clicked. Warriors enjoy battle. Leaders understand its cost. You think like a leader, even though you claim you are not warrior. News of the victory spread quickly. Other tribes sent messengers to see if the story was true. The small Veltar tribe had defeated the mighty Kethra? Impossible. But the evidence was there in Crystal Canyon. Tribes that had feared the Kethra suddenly saw hope. If the Veltar could win, maybe they could resist too. Maybe they could be free. Delegations arrived asking for alliance, asking Han Solo to teach them his methods. The Veltar went from being a small, struggling tribe to being powerful and respected. Vorn approached Han Solo one evening as he sat outside the caves, looking at the stars. I was wrong about you, the hunter clicked. I thought you would make us weak. Instead, you made us strong. I just shared knowledge, Han Solo replied. You did the fighting. You showed the courage. Knowledge is power, Vorn said. I understand that now. The Skywalker brought us power from the stars. Han Solo smiled sadly. The stars. His home was up there somewhere, but it felt farther away than ever. He had been here over a year now. No rescue had come. No ships had appeared. Maybe they never would. Maybe this moon, these people, this life was all he had left. As Vorn walked away, Nim sat down beside Han Solo. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the alien constellations. Do you regret staying? Nim asked quietly. Han Solo thought about it. Sometimes. But you are my family now. This is my home. I have purpose here. Good. Nim clicked. Because we need you. Not just for fighting. For everything. You change how we think. How we see the world. Han Solo put his hand on Nim's shoulder. His friend was right. He was changing them. But they were changing him too. He was not the same person who had crashed here. He was stronger, wiser, more connected to something larger than himself. He was Skywalker. And the legend was just beginning. 10 years passed like water through fingers. Han Solo's hair turned gray at the temples. Lines appeared around his eyes. His body, which had been young and strong when he crashed, began to show the weight of time and hard living. But the Veltar tribe flourished. Under Han Solo's guidance, they had learned so much. They understood metallurgy now. Melting the rare ores Han Solo had found in the deep wastes, they created better tools, stronger weapons. They built aqueducts to bring clean water from distant springs. They grew crops using methods Han Solo taught them. Ensuring food even in bad seasons, other tribes came to learn. The Veltar became teachers, spreading knowledge across the moon. Wars became less common. Cooperation became more valued. The scattered tribes began to think of themselves as one people. Han Solo watched it all with pride and sadness. He had built something here. Something good. But sometimes, late at night, He still looked at the stars and wondered about Earth, about other humans, about the life he had lost. Nim had children now, 3 young ones who called Han Sol Uncle Sky in their clicking language. They loved his stories about Earth, about oceans and cities and billions of humans. To them, it sounded like fantasy. To Han Sol, it was a fading memory. On the morning that changed everything, a young scout came running into the caves. Signal. The scout clicked frantically. Strange signal in the northern valley. Han Sol's heart stopped. Signal? He followed the scout, running despite his aging knees. They climbed to the high ridge, and there, in the valley below, something blinked. A light. Regular. Artificial. A rescue beacon. Human technology. Han Sol's hands shook as he climbed down to it. The device was half buried in the ground. Damaged but still functioning. It must have been ejected from his ship during the crash, landed far away, and taken 10 years to work through the soil to the surface. It was still sending. Still calling for rescue. And if it was working, someone might hear it. Someone might come. Han Sol stared at the beacon for a long time. Nim stood beside him, silent. His friend understood what this meant. You could go home, Nim finally clicked. Return to your people. Yes, Han Sol whispered. I could. He reached for the beacon. His fingers touched the metal casing. One switch would turn it off. One choice would make the decision final. Images flashed through Han Sol's mind. The Veltar teaching him their language. Tella's wisdom. Vorn's respect earned through trial. The children he had taught. The tribe he had saved. The knowledge he still had to share. Nim's friendship. Deeper than blood. And then images of Earth. Crowds of humans. Technology. Comfort. Speaking his native language. Eating familiar food. Being among his own species again. Both were home. Both were family. But he could only choose one. Han Sol made his decision. He picked up a large rock. Nim started to speak, but Han Sol held up his hand. He raised the rock high and brought it down on the beacon. Again. And again. Until the device was shattered. Its light extinguished. Its signal dead. Why? Nim asked, markings bright with confusion and hope. Because this is where I belong, Han Sol said. You are my family. The Veltar are my people. I have work here that matters. On Earth, I was just one engineer among billions. Here, I can change the world. Nim embraced him, a gesture the Veltar had learned from watching Han Sol. You already have changed the world, my friend. You already have. The years continued to pass. Han Sol taught the next generation everything he knew. Mathematics, physics, chemistry, engineering principles, but also Earth philosophy, human values, stories and songs from his childhood. He wanted them to know where his knowledge came from, to understand that humans, despite being far away, had much to offer. He taught them to ask questions, to experiment, to never accept "that's how we've always done it" as an answer. Some of the young Veltar showed incredible aptitude. They took Han Sol's teachings and expanded on them, creating new innovations. A young Veltar named Kree invented a better way to forge metal. Another, Tam, discovered how to preserve food for months. A third, Lyra, created a writing system so knowledge could be recorded permanently, instead of just remembered. Han Sol wept with joy when he saw the first written words. He was not just teaching them to fish. He was teaching them to create fishing rods, to build boats, to sail oceans. They would continue learning long after he was gone. 20 years after the crash, Han Sol's body began to fail. The alien environment, despite his adaptation, had taken its toll. His lungs had never fully recovered from the dead wastes. His heart struggled with the moon's gravity. Tayla's medicines helped, but they could not stop time. Crix had died 5 years earlier, peacefully in his sleep. Vorn now led the tribe with wisdom Han Solo had helped him develop. Nim was the chief advisor, the keeper of the Skywalker's teachings. Han Solo spent his final years mostly teaching and telling stories. He sat in the great cave, surrounded by young Veltar, sharing everything he could remember about humanity, about kindness, about perseverance, about the power of community. Remember, he told them in their language, which he now spoke perfectly. Strength is not just physical. It is not just about winning fights. True strength is helping others. True strength is learning. True strength is never giving up, even when things seem impossible. The children listened with wide, glowing eyes. To them, the Skywalker was ancient and wise. They did not know he was only 48 years old. To humans, he would have been middle-aged. To Veltar, who lived shorter lives, he seemed impossibly old. On a quiet evening, as the twin moons rose over the Crystal Mountains, Han Solo gathered the tribe's leaders, Vorn, Nim, Tella's successor Mira, and the Council of Elders. "I need you to promise me something," Han Solo said. His voice was weak now, his breathing labored. "Anything," Vorn clicked solemnly. "Do not stop learning. Do not let my death end your growth. Keep teaching each other. Keep experimenting. Keep asking why and how. The universe is full of wonders. Never stop seeking them. We promise." They clicked together. "And one more thing," Han Solo continued. "When you reach the stars someday, and you will, remember that you did it yourselves. I only showed you the door, you walked through it. You are strong. You are smart. You are worthy." Nim's markings flickered with sadness. "We would not have survived without you. You would have." Han Solo smiled. "It might have taken longer. But you would have found the way. I just accelerated what was already inside you. We? Creating them. I would have percent. I would have found the way. I would have found the way. I would have found the way." That night, Han Solo died in his sleep. He went peacefully, surrounded by the soft glow of the Veltar's bioluminescent markings. His last sight was of the family he had chosen, the people he had served, the home he had made. The Veltar mourned for a month. They had never mourned that long for anyone. But the Skywalker was special. He was the one who fell from above, the stranger who became family, the teacher who changed everything. Vorn ordered the creation of a monument. The tribe's best artisans worked for a year on it. They carved a statue from the purest crystal in the caves. It showed Han Solo as they remembered him best, standing tall, one hand raised as if explaining something, the other holding a tool. At the base, they carved words in their writing system, the system they would not have had without him. Han Solo, the Skywalker. He came from the stars. He stayed for love. He taught us to dream. The monument stood in the great cave for centuries. Generations of Veltar grew up touching its base for good luck. They told stories of the Skywalker to their children. The stories grew and changed, becoming legends, but the core truth remained. A stranger had crashed on their world. Against all odds, he had survived. Through ingenuity and kindness, he had earned their trust. Through teaching and sacrifice, he had transformed their civilization, and when he could have left, he had chosen to stay. 200 years after Han Solo's death, the Veltar launched their first spacecraft. It was crude compared to human ships, but it worked. They named it Han Solo's Dream. 300 years later, they had spread to 3 other moons and 1 small planet. They met other species, formed alliances, joined the wider galactic community. They were known as wise, peaceful, and eager to learn. Every Veltar ship carried a small crystal statue of the Skywalker. Every Veltar child learned his story. They knew about Earth, about humans, about the species that had given them their greatest teacher. When the Veltar finally made contact with humanity again, the human diplomats were shocked. They had written off the mining ship as lost centuries ago, but here was an entire civilization that remembered one human's name, that had built their culture partly on his teachings. The Veltar diplomat stood before the human council and spoke in perfect human language, a language they had kept alive through Han Solo's recordings and teachings. We are the Veltar. We come in peace and friendship. We owe a debt to humanity that can never be repaid. One of your people fell onto our world long ago. He was Han Solo. He could have hated us, feared us, fought us. Instead, he taught us. He loved us. He gave us the stars. We come to you today to say thank you. And to tell you that Han Solo's legend lives on. In our schools, our ships, our hearts, we ask ourselves, when we face difficult choices, what would the Skywalker do? And the answer is always the same. Be kind, be brave, never stop learning, never give up. The human diplomats wept. They had not known. One lost engineer had changed an entire species, had created a bridge between two civilizations, had proven that one person, in the right place at the right time, with the right heart, could change the universe. The Veltar gifted humanity with a crystal statue of Han Solo. It now stands in the Museum of First Contact on Earth. Billions of humans visit it every year. They learn about the engineer who crashed on an alien moon and became a legend. They learn that humanity's greatest strength is not technology or weapons. It is the ability to connect, to teach, to adapt, to care. It is the willingness to build bridges instead of walls. And on the moon where it all began, the original monument still stands. The Veltar maintain it carefully, keeping the crystal polished, the words clear. New pilgrims visit every day, touching the base, whispering the old prayer. Thank you, Skywalker. Thank you for falling from the stars. Thank you for staying. Thank you for showing us what we could become. The legend of Han Solo, the human who turned into the legend, the Veltar, remember, will never die. It will echo through the stars forever. A reminder that greatness is not about where you come from or how you start. It is about the choices you make, the people you help, the love you share, the legacy you leave behind. Han Solo was just one man, but he changed everything, and that is the greatest human story of all.